So do any of you guys know what CQI is? Feel free to shout it out or put it in the chat box. Do you guys have an idea of what just the acronym stands for, CQI? It's all good. Exactly. Continuous quality improvement. I knew what you meant, Bev. I knew what you meant. It does. It stands for continuous quality improvement. And the way we do CQI and the way CQI is done is in 3 steps. These are like 3 important steps. And it's really more of a cycle. And the reason it's a cycle is because once you finish, once you start at assess, you plan and then improve. And then depending on where you are and improve, you may want to reassess and go back to that. So that is why it is a cycle. But let's go into a little more depth of what each one is. So first off, we have assess. So in the textbook definition in the manual, it states collects data on the program using multiple strategies. Data comes from sources including self-assessments, review of program policies and manuals, interviews and surveys conducted with staff, youth, and other stakeholders, and observation of program activities. What does this really mean? This is a lot of information right away. What this really basically means, to just get to the point of it, is basically assesses gathering your data within your program. You need to determine those areas needing improvement. That's where you want to this is where you want to gather all that data within your program, whether you're surveying students, surveying parents, whether you're evaluating staff, seeing their views. This is that point where you're just collecting that data. Now, in terms of a brief explanation of plan, is the textbook definition for this states reflect on program data and use data to generate and implement an action plan for program improvement. Action plans can be used to revise and refine organizational strategies and goals to direct organizational resources towards areas that need improvement and to guide professional development for staff. What does this mean? To get to the point of this, it's basically, now that you identified those areas needing improvement in your asset and when you were doing assess, it's now time to create those SMART goals and an action plan in order to meet those goals. So in this portion of planning, that's where you're creating those SMART goals for your programmatic or your point of service quality standards, and you're creating your action plan to follow through with that and how you're going to go through it. This is your planning phase, basically. And then the last section is improve. This textbook definition states implement the action plan, taking time to reflect on progress along the way. Once key goals are met, reassess and update the action plan accordingly. What does this really mean? Put your plan into place and evaluate if goals are met. If your goals are not being met, this is the chance to go back and reassess. That's why it's a cycle. You want to go back to that assess phase and reassess your SMART goals, reassess your action plan as needed. That is why it is a continuous cycle. So now that we went through that, let's go into assess. This is going to be more of an in-depth for each one. So now we're going to start with assess. So with assess, it's basically assess and identify your program needs. So ways we assess is through data. And data that Learn uses, that we've used in the past and we currently use, is the PSOT, which is our program staff observation tool, our student staff surveys, and our APTA, which is the assessment of program practices tool observation. The APTA we currently I know this question was asked earlier. The APTA we don't currently do due to distance learning, but prior to the pandemic and hopefully after, once everything returns to normalcy, we'll be able to do the APTA once again. And this is a tool that we use to help survey our survey and get a input on how our program's running from our stakeholders' point of view. Student and staff surveys, we always use those as well to get an idea of what they see our program as and what ways we can improve it. And PSOTs are a good tool that site coordinators use to help evaluate staff and see how they are going amongst their time working in the program and see how they're improving. Now, once you get this data, we may ask, how do we analyze it? And that's always a big thing. Is once you have all this data, what are we going to do? How are we going to analyze it? So when we analyze it, that's when we want to go back to CQI. And we want to look at CQI and look exactly more specifically at the standards. CQI is split up into 2 types of quality standards. We have point of service quality standards and programmatic quality standards. Now, under point of service, there is 6. Those 6 are safe and supportive environment, active and engaged learning, skill building, youth voice and leadership, healthy choices and behaviors, diversity, access, and equity. Under programmatic, we have quality staff, clear vision, mission, and purpose, collaborative partnerships, continuous quality improvement, program management, sustainability. Now, there is a total of 12, but 6 are under point of service and 6 are under programmatic. Point of service is more relative to like your actual program when you're running the program itself. Programmatic is more you're looking at it from a behind the scenes and like the whole grants and a lot of the procedural stuff. So just always keep it in mind like that. But we'll go more in depth with each standard right now. So for a safe and supportive environment, that is our first standard under point of service. The textbook definition states the program provides a safe and nurturing environment that supports the developmental, social, emotional, and physical needs of all students. What this really means is that we're just providing a safe environment that supports students' development. We want to make sure we're providing that space for them. Now, in terms of like, okay, now how does this look like? What does this look like in a program? When we look at a standard, we want to look at it in 3 different types of angles. We want to look at it at a program level, a staff level, and a participant level. So do you guys have any ideas? I would say feel free to shout, like unmute yourself, because I feel like if like you put in the chat, it's a little harder for me to view. But do you guys have any ideas how this would look on a program level? So more like, or a staff level or a participant level, like how does this look like? Like what do you see like for students that if you were to view a safe and supportive environment, how would you see your students? What level would they be at? Or like how do you see this being like, oh, you're at 100%? What would students be doing? What would your staff be doing? Feel free to unmute, share, it's all good.
This would be implementing SEL icebreakers, calling the student by name, acknowledging responses, and not just being, robotic.
Yeah, exactly. Like doing things like that. It's even like those things like calling them by their name, doing those activities. That's help building that safe and supportive environment. And that's what we want to see. We want to see that amongst our students. We want to see them being able to have that form of leadership. I know that's another standard in here, but it also does tie into this because by allowing them to have that leadership, it does also make them feel like, okay, I'm safe enough to express what I need to express and lead what I want to do and do what I want to do. At a staff level, do you guys know what this may look like in terms of like what you would be doing, like what your youth leaders would be doing since they're on the front lines working it?
I want to say for staff that it's something like them working as a team and functioning as a team, and it's kind of like a unit instead of being separate and being vocal with one another. And that you feel welcome. Sorry.
No, go. Keep going. Do your thing.
Just like welcoming the students, because I feel like if students know that those like iffy like feelings or they feel like it's an iffy situation, it's not going to attract students. They don't want something unstable. They want to feel something that's unified and that's a team and that's safe and supportive for them to be in.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a great point. Students can feel vibes. They can feel that body language. Especially, I know in Aspire, it's a lot more like you're working with other youth leaders at the time, especially because sometimes classrooms and stuff like that, prep is a little different at times, but students can feel the energy in a room. And you want to make sure your staff is creating that energy that it makes them feel safe to come in. It makes them feel like, okay, I'm not just going to come in and just sit here and not get help on homework or stuff like that. Your staff is a team, and it shouldn't be where a student's like, oh, this one person makes me uncomfortable. It needs to be where everyone feels comfortable. And that's how we create a safe and supportive environment. So at a programmatic level, site coordinators work closely with youth leaders to create school-aligned health and safety procedures for your program. This is more like in terms of like how we make it safe and supportive on a procedural level, in terms of like, unfortunately, there is, and prior to the pandemic, school shootings. And we want to make sure we have these procedures known with our students that what to do in these events or in a fire drill or in a fire, in an earthquake, what do we do? That's why it's important for everyone in each program to have those drills. On a staff level, we do want to build and maintain trusting and nurturing supportive relationships with all our students and participate in healthy and safety procedures and trainings, just like how I said earlier. And then at the student level, participants, they should be able to share responsibility in building a sense of community and belonging and co-create behavioral agreements. So when you're making that social contract, this is where they should be putting that input in to make sure they feel like they're being expressed and what they want in a program. Students want to feel safe. They don't want to feel like they're in danger, because I don't think anyone ever wants to feel like they're in danger. So we want to make sure we're doing that for all of them. Does anyone have any questions on this specific standard? All right, cool. If you have, go for it.
Late, I have to finish a meeting about safety.
Good.
But in terms of this, I think in the terms for the ELP program and what safety looks like for us now is very different, right?
Yeah.
And so making this a goal for year 20 or anything like that, apologies for jumping in a little, 2021, maybe specifically for the ELP program, what are some ways we can break that down and making sure we're meeting those goals? One, obviously being reaching EMCSD protocols and decision pathways. But are there anything else that would be tagging on to that in terms of reaching that goal for CQI that I'm missing? Or would that just be kind of the one check mark?
I think just something I know that it mentioned when it comes to safe support environments is you always want to meet with your school admin and see their policies and procedures. And like how you said, you do meet the district guidelines. That is a good important step to take. I think other important steps to take would be also making sure having like those weekly meetings with staff and making sure you're checking in like, okay, are we following all these procedures? Like which parts are we lacking in? And it's okay for them to be like, you know what, honestly, I'm kind of lacking in this area. It's hard to do this. Because then at least you know, okay, they're trying, but it's not working. So let's find a way to reassess this. How can we make sure we get this goal achieved? So you want to have those weekly meetings to kind of just check in with them and be like, do you feel safe? Do you feel like your students feel safe? And ask the students too, because some students may feel, you may have one that's going to feel like, oh, I feel great. And then you may have one that's going to feel like, it's a little scary in here. So you want to make sure you always ask the students too. And also it wouldn't be bad to also share your policies and procedures with students and with parents. Just make sure that whatever procedures you do have, you make sure you get them approved through Learn and through your supervisor and all that stuff first, and your school admin. Because anything we send out to parents, we want to make sure it's approved through the right channels and everything. But yeah, as I think something like along those lines, creating that set of procedures, even if it's on like a paper document, something, so they have it to reference back as well, I think it might help a lot, especially because of COVID. It's going to be a lot harder. I know the high schools were opening up our pods too. So it's all about, it's honestly the biggest thing I think I could share is probably communication is key. It's communication with your school admin, with the district, with your supervisors, to see what things they need and to see what things, and incorporate things you may need in your own program as well, because they may miss something. So I would say something.
Okay, and I think my follow-up question in terms to that would be, the meeting I had today was definitely all about reviewing COVID policies. How are we doing there? How can we revamp? How we can do better? And I know Justine and I have talked about it a little bit too, and we've been able to revamp it to be safer, better, more efficient, and everything. Though there are some guidelines according to EMCSD and the public health department for EMCSD that are frankly honest with my staff that they don't necessarily agree with in terms of it's not safe enough. And so when we hit kind of a wall that way in terms of safety guidelines that we may want to ramp up and do more here, but according to the guidelines, that's not something within our power. How can we build that bridge so we can meet this overall CQI goal of safety?
Yeah, in that case, I think just what I would probably suggest, what I would maybe do is I would make those things known to the school admin and make those things known, because I'm sure if you're facing this, you may not be the only site facing these type of issues of, hey, you know what, I don't feel this safe. And if that is a genuine concern, then that is something that should be raised to your supervisor and should be raised to your school admin, only because then they could find a way and explain, because either one, it's going to be one of two, that it's either one, it is safe and they could explain why it is safe, or two, it isn't safe and they could try to fix it. And it's important to make those things known. But yeah, I would say the best thing that you can do is maybe reach out to your supervisor, reach out to school admin, and let these concerns be known, just because if it's concerning to you, it may be concerning to someone else, and it could be a need to reevaluate that.
Awesome. That's really good. Thanks. And reaching out to be able to build those bridges and get that support. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Does anyone else have any questions on this specific standard too? All right, I'm gonna go on to number 2. So number 2 is active and engaged learning. So the definition for this is program design and activities reflect active, meaningful, and engaging learning methods that promote collaboration and expand student horizons. What this means, we want to just create those positive experiences for students within your program, make sure they're building on their development with this. So in terms of this standard, what does this look like on your program as well? A lot is going to be the same, by the way, guys. But we're just gonna, these standards, like once you actually know them, it actually does help a lot in planning your goals. So what does this look like in your program? What does this look like for your youth leaders? What does this look like for your students? How does this look like to you guys? And if you don't know, feel free to guess too. We're all here to share, to learn what you think it may look like.
And I'll hop on the mic again. I think for prep, it's having the students who are actually studying, actually focused on studying. And when they have questions, that they can go to youth leaders and ask those questions. I know for Mountain View, we would have the students who are like in the same classrooms or would have the same typical types of questions, like on one table and the other ones on different tables. So at least if they didn't feel comfortable communicating with the youth leaders, they had the other students to be able to ask questions and work on assignments together.
Yes, I love that. I think that's a great idea, especially because a lot of students are very different in the way they interact with people. We all know this. You have that student that is quiet and shy, and either one, they're quiet and shy and they're secretly succeeding with all their academics, or they're quiet and shy and they just don't ask for help. Sometimes it's in between. We never know. And every student's going to have a different method. So I think the idea that you have of like setting up different types of tables and letting them feel like some can come up to them, some can't, can go like, and even if you want to do something like a Dropbox, like, making active and engaged learning for prep, it is a little different only because we do focus a lot on our like tutoring versus like a lot of other stuff. But in Aspire, I know that active and engaged learning, this is part of your whole day. Like this is like that rec, and this is for everyone, but in Aspire, I know they have more of that ability to do that rec and make sure it's active and engaged and do that enrichment and make sure that active and engaged. And I know it can be a lot. Some of us have been there and it's a lot. But, the good thing about a lot of the times when you're planning these activities and making them active and engaged, look at them from a real perspective that you're looking at it at. Like if you were them and you're reading this to yourself and you're like, you know what, I don't even understand what this is saying, or like this is just not grabbing my attention. Make it effective for your students. You guys know your students. And if you don't, because sometimes, I get it, like you may like how your youth leaders are the ones on the front lines. Ask your youth leaders. They should know those type of students. And then for prep, a lot of times we get those same old students, those hardcore fans that just come back all the time. Those youth leaders, they come back for certain youth leaders, and that's because they know how to work with them. So as like staff, we need to make sure that whatever we're planning, whether it's like tutoring, we need to make sure we're effective in those methods. in terms of tutoring methods, you have different ways students are going to learn. Some students like to be very vocal and very like, oh, teacher, can you help me? And then some are like, they'll go up to you and be like, oh, can you help me? Obviously, with the pods, it's a little different, but we do have those safety measures. But just keep in mind that whenever you're planning something, whether even it's like a enrichment club or a recreational sport, we want to make it where every student feels they can participate, and that's where you're going to get more of your participation. Like, for example, with rec, if we play like something where it's focused on athleticism, it's not going to really incorporate all your students, because a lot of the times what we like to do with recreation prior to the pandemic was we would do a lot of activities that didn't focus specifically on athleticism, but it focused a lot on just like, you know, it incorporates everyone. It doesn't matter how strong or how tall you are. It didn't matter. It was just more like everyone was able to do it and everyone felt comfortable doing it. Does anyone have any questions on this? The way this looks at a program level is just we're providing a variety of activities. Make sure there is a variety, because a lot of students are very different. At a staff level, make sure we're giving participants the experience of learning through multiple senses. I've always learned that the best way to learn is through using senses, using touch, feel. Obviously, right now with COVID, try to avoid that. But, you know, like just smell, stuff like that, like eyesight, things like that. Visual things help students learn sometimes. And then at a student level, all participants in a group work are engaged, cooperate. That's what it should look like. If you're achieving this goal, it should be like all students are engaged. And you know what? This can take time. You may have half of them engaged, but at least now your goal is, okay, let's get the other half engaged. Or maybe you have none and you're like, okay, let's start with a small goal. Let's get 50% engaged. That's what you want to look at it as. I'm going to go on to the next one. Anyone have any questions? Feel free to jump on. Don't be shy. So our next one under point of service is skill building. This one, the textbook states, the program maintains high expectations for all students, intentionally links program goals and curricula with 21st century skills, and provides activities to help students achieve mastery. What does this mean? So we're basically just creating goals within our program that incorporate the 21st century skills like critical thinking, communication, collaboration, stuff like that. And it's able to provide students the opportunity to achieve proficiency in them. Skill building is a big portion of that ties along with that active and engaged learning. A lot of the things we do should be skill building. It shouldn't be like, oh, we're just doing this, but it's not going to really help their development in any way. There's honestly a lot of ways to skill build with any activity. It's just more about just really thinking outside the box. Like, what skill are they building with this? Do any of you guys have any ideas of how you guys, or any activities you guys done that help skill build, whether it's through collaboration activities, creative thinking? Like, it'd be cool to know some prep ones, because, like, you know, prep is a little different. Aspire, by all means, too, because I know Aspire is different, too. Any of y'all got ideas? Feel free. Go ahead, unmute and just share.
So,
all right. Oh, go.
you want to do that? Oh, okay, thanks. Oh, hi, here for Aria. Thanks. Can we get Aria ready to go? Sorry, guys. So my morning staff, they were able to have, like, they have a good sweet spot between 1 and 2 o'clock where a lot of their younger kids are able to finish their homework and the older ones finish as well. And they were able to do some socially distanced, or at least paired up within the siblings in the class, a project using a Nat Geo project that I did a PPA order for from building volcanoes. And so what they were able to do was find out the science behind volcanoes. They did a whole kind of prep for that week in terms of, like, what are volcanoes, what comes out of them, how to do the science experiment. They were able to put them together and see it all kind of like flow out, and did like a Kahoot afterwards. And so I think this kind of the skills they were able to gain from there were not only just like educational skills in terms of learning about volcanoes, but putting together an actual kit in terms of like what goes where, following instructions, working with their sibling in terms of team building. And so those are some hard skills I think they got out of the project as well. And it was really fun. They had a good time.
Yes, perfect. That shows that collaboration too, especially if they get to work with their siblings, because obviously it has to be safe as well. But yeah, definitely. And they get to build and do their own research. We're not just like, here's all this stuff, here's all your research. They have to go and do it themselves, which is important because that does teach them, like, okay, I can go research, I can go find the answers to these questions. If I'm not getting the answers, I could find them. Bev, did you want to share?
Hi, sorry. It takes a while for me to process information sometimes. So sorry. Okay, so specifically for skill building, I think this one was pretty cool because bringing it back to like active and engaged learning and safe and supportive environment after building the rapport and building like the safe environment for students to be able to voice what they want on the staff level, on the participant level, creating activities and programs based off of what the students actually want to see and want to develop in is pretty cool. And then creating some sort of culminating event for it. So I know at Whittier, pre-COVID, those were the days. At Whittier, one of the things we were doing for skills building was creating an art walk specifically for all of our programs. That was something that everybody was collaborating with. So all of our clubs came together. It was supposed to be photography club, our book club, our jewelry club. We were supposed to host an art walk that was already approved. And they were supposed to be able to showcase their artwork. Our entrepreneur club was supposed to make like a little show too. They were going to teach the parents and the students how to create their own business and how to create their own business cards. So they were, professional development, right? And then our book club, they were supposed to do some sort of poetry slam where they were going to recite their poetry in front of everybody else. So like working on, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, my words. Sorry. Working on, conversation skills, public speaking, that's the one. They were working on public speaking skills. So those are some things that we do, like creating a culminating event. And it doesn't have to be huge, like a big event like that. It could be something small. So like for art club, creating an art portfolio at the end, where they like develop all of their skills and do all of their projects, put them all together and create some sort of like project. But yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Perfect. Yes, them art walks. I remember them art walks prior to the pandemic when that was normalcy. But yeah, we want to like do events. PBL is basically what Bev did in some words. It's a project-based learning. I know even during the pandemic, we can still do this. For example, I had the opportunity to actually check out Bev's podcast club. And it's actually really amazing. She has these students at Whittier High School that are interested in doing a podcast club. And we're able to order the materials for it and all that stuff. So they're able to do it and they're able to edit it themselves and all that stuff. I know one thing that I'm doing right now on my site for my service learning is a COVID documentary thing. And it's basically going to be like where we have a student who's the director, a student who's the editor, students that are interviewers, creating questions, stuff like that. And it's cool because the way we thought it out was that we can make it where it's like a documentary, like a visual video documentary, but when they're doing those interviews and preparing and all that stuff, they can work together to create questions, research services for those families that need those services, whether it's food services, whether it's general supply services. They're able to research. So when they interview and they find out how the COVID-19 impacted their life and they're able to see where they need help in, they're able to provide those resources. And the cool thing is that we're able to do all the interviews through video chats. So we're able to record the video chats, well, obviously with everyone's permission, and the signatures of the photo release. But yeah, that's one way that that I know we plan at our site to do skill building still.
Andy, so Will actually put in the chat when thinking about skill building at the participant level, having additional activities to build upon their skills once they're done with homework, and at the staff level, setting up center stages, workshops, etc., and checking that our staff are encouraging students to participate in these different activities. And he added not just busy work.
Yeah, exactly. We want to make sure it's not just busy work. We want to make sure this is actually something they're interested in. Just like how it goes back to that active and engaged learning. We want to make sure this is something they're interested in. So what this looks like, basically at a program level, the program supports program activities in which participants demonstrate mastery working toward the final presentation. Staff level, staff develop and learn goals for each activity and communicate these with youth. Where are they doing this? What skills are they going to build? It's good to let them know this. In terms of participants are working in groups where they practice skills such as team building, collaboration, and use of effective communication. I'm going to go into the next one. If you guys have any questions on any or any thoughts, feel free to jump in. This next one is youth voice and leadership. This is a big one that we do incorporate a lot at our program. And what it states is the program provides and supports intentional opportunities for students to play a meaningful role in program design and implementation, and provides ongoing access to authentic leadership roles. What does this mean? We want to incorporate students in creating and leading activities within our programs. So in terms of before the pandemic and still currently, we had SAB, Student Advisory Board. This is a big thing that was created to help give students that voice, help them plan events. They helped a lot in planning a lot of our field trips, and they helped a lot in making those events happen. When it comes to planning a field trip, it's not as easy like, oh, let's go here. It's not just one and done like that. They have to plan the promotion of it, getting those posters out, getting those announcements in the school message boards, all that stuff. And that is incorporating youth voice and leadership because this is something they want to do. So they're choosing where to go, but they're also making it happen. It's not just like, oh, let's do this. They're planning it out and making sure it gets fully done. In Aspire, we have SAB as well, and they are able to help put on events as well. I remember one time at Rio Hondo, we did a school cleanup. That is an easy and amazing one to do, that students get to help clean in the school, and they also get to build that voice and do that. And you know, in SAB, we do have the president, we do have the treasury and all that stuff, depending on how your site works, but it's a really important thing to have at everyone's site. And also just in general, when planning enrichment activities or recreational stuff, you may have students that come up and be like, oh, can we do this? A lot of things are very possible. You just have to make it adjusted to where it can be possible for your club and for your program. So in terms of what this will look like, it's going to look at a program level like we're providing opportunities and a space to share viewpoints and concerns. Everyone's going to have different views and different things they want to do, but it's about incorporating all that. We want to make sure we're giving every student the opportunity. We want to make sure it's authentic and meaningful leadership roles. It's not just like, oh, you're in charge of this, but they don't do nothing. We want to make sure their job is actually something they can do and something that they enjoy doing. At a staff level, staff should be encouraging and engaging all students on a regular basis to share their perspectives, whether it's regarding the program or what they want to learn and the quality of their experience in the program. We want all our students to feel the ability to be vocal and express themselves. And that's like a big important thing that we want to ensure with youth voice and leadership. This is a big one that we all really do, but if you guys have questions, feel free to hop on the mic. I'm going to go on to number 5. Healthy choices and behaviors. The program promotes student well-being through opportunities to learn about and practice balanced nutrition, physical activity, and other healthy choices in an environment that supports a healthy lifestyle. So what does this mean? We just want to make sure we're promoting healthy choices within our program. In terms of what this will look like, what do you guys think? Do you think taking in a youth leader, even I guess in relative to time right now, if a youth leader came on camera with students and they're eating a bag of hot Cheetos and a Frappuccino, is that a healthy choice and behavior that we should be embodying? What does it look like to you guys? Have you guys had any positive experiences with healthy choices and behaviors? Do you guys have any experiences of how students are like making healthy choices and behaviors, or how they're not, and how you can improve it? Does anyone have anything to share? If not, it's all good. It is all good. Let me give you some examples though. But yeah, exactly. Like Will said, incorporating the 4 questions, capturing kids' hearts. That's a way to redirect that behavior. If a student does come in, for example, because we do have them students prior to the pandemic, and even maybe now in the pods that come in with them bags of hot Cheetos and Takis, and it's like those aren't the really best choices to be eating in the morning for breakfast. Maybe a banana, something like that. Incorporating those 4 questions are a good way to redirect. At a program level, we want to create that healthy culture and environment that positively influenced by collaborative and coordinated efforts of family, school, and community. Obviously, we can't change everyone's eating habits. We can't change everyone's healthy choices or choices and behaviors they make. But we can change our own and make sure what we're promoting is what's representative of healthy choices and behaviors. So in terms of even when you're meeting with staff, make sure we're promoting that. And we're not over here, getting our grub on some some Cheeto puffs and stuff like that. We want to make sure that we're embodying that for our staff, and for the staff to do that with our students as well, because we want to show them that we are also making these choices and we want to influence them to make them as well. Staff, they should be also providing daily participants to engage in developmentally appropriate research-based nutrition and physical activities. That recreational component is important. I know a lot of times this may be things I lack. This may be a component, the rec component may be something you guys strive in. Rec is an important way to incorporate that physical activity and build those healthy choices and behaviors. On the participant level, we want to make sure that students have that voice in creating and maintaining healthy culture and environment within their program. When students come in with those food items that aren't the best, or when they just don't feel like, oh, I don't want to play rec today, but obviously if it's for a medical reason, that's different. It's more like if it's like they don't want to play because they're just lazy, like we want to build them to want to play. And, ask them if they don't want to play, what is something you would want to play? That's a great question to always ask, because sometimes it may just be something different. And maybe you could be like, next week we'll play that. We'll do that for sure next week. So it's always about making sure they have a voice to also create that healthy choice and behavior for within themselves. Does anyone have any questions on healthy choices and behaviors? No? All right. If you do, just feel free to hop on the mic. I'm going to go on to number 6 and the last one of point of service. This one is diversity, access, and equity. So what it states is the program creates an environment in which students experience values that embrace diversity and equity regardless of race, color, religion, sex, age, income level, national origin, physical ability, sexual orientation, and/or gender identity and expression. So what does this mean? Ensure your program is inclusive and equitable for all students. We want to make sure we're inclusive with whatever it is we do. We want to make sure that we're creating a welcoming environment by when they come in being, hey, hello, how are you doing? What's going on? Whether we have to sometimes be a little silly, sometimes that gets people more into the program and what you're doing. Because sometimes it could be like, oh, they had a bad day, but we can be that positive reinforcement. And we should be that for everyone, not just for, oh, these students are like, my favorite. We should never have like a favorite. We should always be inclusive to everyone and equitable. You may have a student that may need more assistance. For example, in previous years when I was in Aspire, we had a student that did have disabilities. And so obviously I had to provide more time for that student to be equitable, because the amount of work that student could get done was not going to be the same as another student can get done. So we want to make sure we're equitable, and we realize that equity is just basically just making sure that you're providing the same amount, not the same, I'm sorry. Being equitable is putting yourself in their shoes and being able to see like, okay, like, well, they're in a different circumstance. We need to make accommodations for that. This person's in a different circumstance than them. We need to make accommodations. And we do have to make those at times. We want to make sure that all students and staff are comfortable in sharing and give opportunities to share from their cultures and their backgrounds, because that allows them to feel safe and supportive. A lot of these standards are going to tie in with one another. Do any of you guys have any questions on how this looks? Another important thing with this is that we could also, as it says on the staff level, is staff can participate in ongoing diversity and sensitivity trainings. This could be very important. You may need a staff that doesn't really know how to work on like promoting diversity, access, and equity, or creating an inclusive environment. You may want to have them attend a training like that. And given within your budget, you may be able to provide that opportunity for them and allow them to grow so that you're able to provide that quality programming. Now that we went over through the point of services one, we're going to get into programmatic. So quality staff. This is basically the program recruits and retains high quality staff and volunteers who are focused on creating a positive learning environment and provide ongoing professional development based on assessed staff needs. What does this mean? Ensure your program has staff that's qualified to create a positive learning environment. In terms of what this is going to look like, it's going to obviously, we should have quality staff. So staff should be demonstrating an ability to deliver a program that meets grant requirements. A lot of times on this programmatic section, it's going to be a lot of stuff dealing with our grant and our guidelines and our procedures. In terms, we all should want quality staff, quality staff leads for a quality program. So in terms of that, having quality staff, participants are able to build those trusting and positive relationships with all their staff. And we want that because when students are able to feel trusting and have those positive relationships and grow those positive relationships, they're more willing, a lot for prep, they're more willing to come back. Sometimes we have those prep is a little drop in, drop out. With Aspire though, it's important to build those relationships because those students a lot of times don't really have the choice to come in and out when they choose. So a lot of times they may have a bad day, they may have a good day. You want to make sure that we're making sure that our staff are of quality and they receive the necessary trainings they need and all the things they need to do and need to receive in order to provide that quality programming. Does anyone have any questions on this? If you do, feel free to share out. Clear vision, mission, and purpose. What this means is basically we're having a clear defined vision of mission, goals, and measurable outcomes that reflect broad stakeholder input to drive program design, implementation, and improvement. So what does this mean? We want to ensure our programs align with Learn's mission of encouraging a culture of learning for all students and families. Learn has its own mission, but we can also create our own missions within our own programs. Every program is going to look different and every vision may look different. Every purpose may look a little different. But at the end of the day, we all want to create that amazing program that's going to support all students' development. And every school site's going to be different. You may have a school site that needs to focus on one thing rather than another thing because maybe they have that other thing already locked and down and they're good to go. So you want to make sure you do evaluate and see what your vision and your mission and your purpose are. At a program level, we want to ensure that our vision and our mission are complementing each other in terms of what do we see? Okay, let's put that in that mission statement. We want to make sure they're tying together to achieve that program goals. For staff, they should share our program's mission, vision, and goals when working with us on site and when they're on the job. They should be promoting those visions because that is the goal of the program. At a participant level, we want to make sure we're providing that they're able to provide that input to impact the program's vision because we want to ask them, what do they want? What do some students expect of an Aspire and Prep and have them be incorporated? It's good to create a site mission statement and a site vision because everyone's going to have it different, or even a classroom thing because I know we all have different classrooms. Do any of you guys have any thoughts on this? Questions? All right, I'm going to go on to number 9, and that is collaborative partnerships. So with this one, basically, the program is intentionally building and supporting collaborative relationships among internal and external stakeholders, including families, schools, community, to achieve program goals. A lot of times we used to examine this with the APTO because we would, a lot of times, the observation would be done by our stakeholders, but our stakeholders are still important. We do still do collaborative partnerships with our schools, For example, at my school, we recently did a family literacy event. I know we teamed up with LaDesma for that. And we were able to do a partnership with our school. Our community liaison helped us. And we did a partnership with the LA County Department of Mental Health. And they were able to provide a workshop on grief and loss. And the cool thing also, just FYI about these workshops, is the LA County Department of Mental Health provides them. They're all free to do. You just have to plan it around. You choose a time, meet. And we did get parents. And that was a collaborative partnership that we were able to do where parents got to do it virtually. They got to jump on a Zoom call and they spoke about a lot of grief and loss. And, they do it in multiple languages, but that partnership that we have with LA County Mental Health Department did help a lot in providing that necessary information for those individuals dealing with a lot of grief and loss. So on a program level, we want to develop collaborative partnerships that are formalized and clearly articulated through written agreements or in-kinds. Those are a lot of times where we show our written collaborative partnerships, you know. In project proposals, we show where the partnership is when we say, how is this event going to be put on? You know, sometimes we have the school participate with us, stuff like that. Staff should be engaging and communicating, connecting with parents to information and services available to them. Parents are our stakeholders. That's including them in a lot of things too as well. And we want to make sure any participants that they share their experience and feedback with whatever things we do, because sometimes you may do something and it may go really great, but sometimes you may also do things that may tend to flop. And that's also okay because then we learn from it. Do any of you guys have any partnerships y'all would like to share? For me, I think I shared a lot about the LA County Mental Health Department. Really amazing team. But do you guys have any other partnerships you guys have that you guys have used before that you guys want to share? Even prior to the pandemic? Yeah, it's all good. But we do a lot of partnerships. But yeah, we do a lot of different ones. I know with field trips, those are technically partnerships because we're doing it with different people as well. But yeah, so let's go on to number 10. So number 10 is continuous quality improvement. That is the basics of this training, but there is a standard on it. So what this means is we're taking data from multiple sources to assess its strengths and weaknesses in order to continuously improve program design, outcomes, and impact. So what does this mean? We want to gather data from participants within our programs to find ways to improve it. That is the basics of what we're doing now at CQI. We're looking to assess and get the data that we need and then analyze it with these standards and see which ones we can like improve on, which ones need improvement, which ones are like, oh, we got it down. That's what we're doing with this. This is going to be something that's clear defined when we're doing this process. We want to make sure we're as clear and to the point when we're planning and doing our action plans, which you guys will see in a little bit. And that's basically the purpose of this. We want to make sure our staff is able to also do this, and that's where it's going to show up in our action plan and see where their parts are going to take part in this. And we also want to make sure when we're doing this thing, it's age appropriate because we have different levels of grades that we work with, and we want to make sure it's appropriate to each one. Number 11, program management. The program has sound fiscal administrative practices supported by well-defined and documented policies and procedures that meet grant requirements. So basically, we want to make sure our program is maintaining the policies and procedures in line with our grant requirements. A lot of us are funded through different grants, so we want to make sure that we're doing what we need to support the guidelines stated in those grants, and we're following through on what we need to get done. A lot of times our program should have a clear organizational structure of how we should be doing things, and a lot of us we do have those things like, okay, for example, we have to do our service learning and stuff like that, or our family literacy events, depending on your grant. So we want to make sure we're completing those requirements for our grants. And then the last one, last but not least, sustainability. So the textbook definition is the program builds enduring partnerships with the community and secures commitments for in-kind monetary contributions. So we want to make sure our program is sustainable. We want to make sure that we're using our budget appropriately. We want to make sure that the contributions that we're getting, we're filling out them in-kind forms because we want to make sure that those are noted. You know, we need to make sure it's sustainable and we're not just putting money towards something that's not even going to turn a profit of like, oh, we're not even getting students. In terms of like trying something, it's good to try stuff and see, is there something here? And you know, if there is, then cool, let's try it again. Like, do it again. If it's you try it and it didn't really work, then maybe, you know, reevaluate how you can make it work. Reevaluate, see what it needs to get those students to come in, see what it needs to get those students engaged. So we want to make sure whatever we're doing, we're being sustainable and we're using our funding efficiently in order to provide those experiences for students, and they feel eager to come and they want to be here because they feel like, oh my gosh, like they're doing this amazing thing. Let's go to prep, let's go to Aspire today. They're doing this cool event. Let's go. So we want to make sure whatever we're doing, that we're using our budget and things that we do are budget friendly, but also that it's going to be a profit in terms of students wanting to come in, and we're doing that positive impact. Now, those are all the standards of CQI. So in terms of assess, we want to make sure once we get that data, we're analyzing it with these standards. Which parts are we lacking? Which parts are we succeeding in? Then you want to formulate a big chunk of this right now. I know that last one seemed like a lot, but that was just getting to know the standards. Once you know the standards, that's not your biggest. Plan and improve are usually your biggest ones. So with plan, now that you've assessed, it's time to plan. So with planning, Learn has methods to plan when it comes to CQI. The methods are SMART goals and action plans. And there's a specific order to this. You first want to do your SMART goal, and then you want to do your action plan. The reason being is because the SMART goal you create, it's usually just like one goal. Like when you do a SMART goal worksheet, it's usually one goal. And that one goal is going to be relative to your action plan because that's your desired outcome. That is going to be that same goal. And then your action plan is where you're going to list the steps on how are we going to achieve this goal. But first, let's get into SMART goals. Do any of y'all know what SMART stands for? It is an acronym. Can y'all like put it in the chat, or can y'all just shout it out what you guys think the S is, the M is, the A, the R, the T, SMART? Don't be scared. No, I would say no guess is wrong, but I guess some guesses are going to be wrong if there's a specific word. But yeah, just anyone have an idea what any of the acronym is? Or all of it? Feel free to unmute. Okay, Bev put specific, measurable, attainable, result focus, and time. You got it. You is on fire today, Beverly. It is specific, measurable, achievable, and attainable. They're similar. Achievable and attainable. You're both achieving it. And then results focused / relevant. Sometimes we use relevant, sometimes we use results focused. It just depends. They're pretty similar too as well. And then time bound. So in terms of SMART goals, when we do this with CQI, we are looking at it through two lenses. We're looking at it through our point of service quality standards, and we're going to look at it through our programmatic quality standards. So you may wonder, okay, well, how are we going to create a SMART goal? How does this work? So when doing a SMART goal, you want to remember the acronyms: specific, measurable, achievable, result focused, relevant, time bound. So in terms of this, we want to ask these questions. For specific, like for our goal, we want to make sure that goal is answering the what, how, and why. Why is this? Why are we doing this? What is your goal? How are you going to do it, and why? You want to be kind of very to the point with it, but also explain what, how, and why. How are we doing this? Why are we doing this? What is the point of it? Measurable. We want to make sure we're identifying how it's going to be measurable, whether it's going to be like we're increasing our percentage from 25% of the population to 75% of the population. However you're going to do it, you want to make sure you have that tool of measurement. And then achievable. Is your goal achievable? This is kind of more like it's going to be yes or no, and if it is, how is it achievable? And that's when you're going to be like, how is it achievable? You're going to get a lot more in depth on that on your action plan, because that's where you're listing the processes to make it achievable. Results focused and relevant. That is your goal. Is your goal focused on results, and how is it relevant? So what results are you expected to see? Why is this relevant? That's going to tie back to that why. Why are we doing this? How is it relevant? It's going to be relevant for a reason, because we need to improve it in some way. And then time bound. What does the time frame for your goal look like? What does it look like for you guys? How is it going to be done by April? Is it going to be done by May? Is it going to be done in 3 months? You want to list that time frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an example of one, and then we'll all just share out on the mics like different parts of it. So for this one, we'll do point of service first. So the example we're going to use and the standard we're going to use is safe and supportive environment. So the example I have here is by the beginning of April 2021, 75% of students will survey that they feel comfortable in expressing themselves within the Aspire program when having youth leaders incorporate capturing kids' heart strategies. We want to remember this goal was pre-done. It's been so we can identify the SMART in it, the specific, the measurable, achievable, results focused, relevant, and time bound. This is already done. So can you guys tell me where and explain why each one is identified in this goal and what part of it's identified. So can you tell me where the specific is in this goal? Where is the measurable in this goal listed? And feel free to take your time to reread it. It could be a lot of words all in one. That's how it be sometimes. And if you don't know, feel free to try. That is the point of this. When you try, you learn. That is the best thing you can always do. So if you don't know, just try and we'll learn together. So do you guys think any of you guys see where the specific is, like the what, how, and why of this goal? Jessica,
Yeah, specific seems like it's the 75% because you're giving an actual measurement that you're aiming to.
Yes, exactly. Specific can be, honestly, what's gonna, and you guys will see this along the way, is a lot of these, like the specific, the measurable, they might and repeat at times because a lot of times one may cover the other. But yeah, the 75% of students will survey that they feel comfortable in expressing themselves within the Aspire program. That is what we're doing. We want to make, that is our goal. That is what we're doing. You know, the how, we'll get more into it in terms of that action plan. How are we going to do this? It says it right here, incorporating capturing kids' heart strategies. We'll get more into like the depth of it within that action plan, but it still states the how. That why. Why are we doing this? The main purpose of this is students should feel comfortable in expressing themselves. By doing this, it's going to tie back to that safe and supportive environment. Oh, sorry about that. Do you guys see the measurable?
The survey is the tool.
The survey is the tool. That survey, that percentage is also the measure too, as well as that date, because we're measuring that by this time, by April 2021, that's when it should happen. We're measuring that 75% of students will feel comfortable. We're measuring it through a survey. There's different ways you can go about like addressing that measure. And it's important that sometimes you may incorporate more than one way. And that's just how it works sometimes. They interchange like that. So right on, Jessica, that is exactly it. Achievable. Is this achievable? If you guys think it's achievable, how is it achievable? Like, is there a specific part of the goal where it shows like, okay, maybe it's going to be achievable because of this? So where would that be in that?
Using the capturing kids' heart strategies that should be able to help the students feel more comfortable, and that's your go-to.
Exactly, that is the achievable, because that's saying like, is it achievable? This seems like it would. How is it achievable? We're incorporating those strategies. So maybe we're going to have those youth leaders attended training. Maybe it's going to tie in like that. It can be achievable if you are able to state that in your goal as well. That will make it a stronger goal that you can have. Is it results focused? How is this relevant? Why is this relevant? Why is this, how is it, is there a goal? Is our goal focused on results? When we're saying that 75% of students will survey that they feel comfortable in expressing themselves, that would seem like the goal. The goal is, our results are hoping that we increase it. Maybe we're starting in January, like we're at 25% of students feel comfortable. Maybe we're starting in January and 50% of students feel comfortable. And our goal is now 75% of students. When you're creating these goals, you're usually creating them with a time frame. So for example, say I'm writing this in January. Well, now we're in February, but say I'm writing this in January. You want to make sure that you're putting that timestamp of, okay, in April 2021, 75%, because you know already after collecting that data and the assessed portion of it, that you were at 25%. So now you want to make it at 75% by April. So is this goal going to be focused on results? It is, because we're hoping that the result goes up by at least 50% if we're starting at 25 and we're going to 75. So we want to make sure that we're listing that it is focused on results, which it would probably get more in depth when you turn in the action plan, because usually when we submit it, we submit the action plan. Now, time bound. This is probably a really easy one. Do you guys see where the time bound is on this one? Anyone want to shout it out? Go for it.
April 2021.
Yeah, exactly. April 2021. That is the time. You want to make sure you're just having that thing of saying like when it's going to happen. So that is the time bound. In terms of another example, this is for programmatic, so quality staffs. A lot of times when we do these, we're turning in usually two. We're turning in one for programmatic and one for point of service. So for programmatic, we have quality staff that we did. And the example is by the beginning of April 2021, 75% of youth leaders will be able to implement Capturing Kids' Heart strategies that build social emotional development and academic success. So with this one, it's the same thing. The specific, what is the point of this goal? What are we doing? We're going to make sure that 75% of our staff is able to implement the Capturing Kids' Heart strategies. Why? In order so they could build students' emotional development and academic success. You know, we want to make sure they're doing that. The tools that we're using to measure, it's going to be, again, that percentage, that 75%. Maybe we're starting in January with only half of our staff doing this. We want to make sure we're raising that up. Be reasonable with your goals. It's okay to shoot for them stars, but also be logical in the sense of, you know what, in the time frame given, how much can we get done in that time frame? You know, measurable. We're doing it by April. We're starting in January. We'll do it by April. And we're starting at 50%. Cool. We should be able to do it. Achievable. Is this achievable? It is. If you're doing those training, those Capturing Kids' Heart workshops, those workshops are amazing for them to get a lot of info. So it is achievable, and you'll list a lot of the stuff in your action plan. Results focus. Our results, yes, again, with that 75%, we're hoping by April they're up because we're starting maybe at 25, maybe we're starting at 50, they're going up. And then time bound, same again, April 2021, that's when we're hoping this is at that point. So a lot of times these are the things we want to do when creating a SMART goal. We want to make sure we're listing that specific, that measurable, the achievable, results focused, and time bound. The reason being is because this is that goal that you're going to list on your action plan. When doing a SMART goal, this is usually the form we use, just so you guys have an idea of what it looks like. It's also on the Google Drive. It's basically just you list the goal right here when you start at the top, and then you go through each one. What part is the specific? What part is the measurable? What part is the attainable? What part is the results focused? What part is the time bound? And usually if you don't find it with that goal you've written, that's your chance to fill it in right there, because then what you could do is on your revised goal, it's where you include all that information. So when you usually come up with a goal, it's not going to be cute and pretty in that one moment and one time. Maybe it is, you know, but you want to make sure that you do this form, because then you'll address all those questions that your supervisor may have, like, well, when is this going to happen, you know, and all that stuff. So make sure the form is a great tool to use when planning these SMART goals. So now, once you have your SMART goal for each one for your programmatic point standards, we're going to move to action plans. Action plans are done with two. We have the point of service and the programmatic. For each one, basically the way it's going to be is at the top, you're going to have your program, mine is prep for the academic year and whatever academic year you're in. The agency name, word learn, you know, and then point of service quality standards. Which one are you doing from point of service? Safe and supportive environment, you know, active engaged learning. Which ones are you doing? So say we're doing safe and supportive action plan for, and then you put your school or environment like the one we just did. What assessment tools are we using? Are we going to use PSOTs? Are we going to use student surveys? Are we going to use parent surveys? Are we going to use APTO? What are we using? Initial assessment dates. When are we starting this? We're starting this in January 8th, 2021. Cool. So names of titles of those involved in the assessment process. So who's collecting that data? Is it just you, the SC? Is it going to be your youth leaders? You want to list those people here. And dates for check-in. I like to list all the dates just so it's specific and clear cut, and I know what dates to put in the bottom part of this. But you can also just put every Friday through blah, blah, blah. But I usually like to put the date specifically, just so you already kind of have them in advance. And then your desired outcome and where you're going to improve, be specific. This is where you're going to put that goal. So where we had by beginning of April 2021, 75% of students will survey that they feel comfortable in expressing themselves within the Aspire program when having youth leaders incorporate capturing kids' heart strategies. That's what's going to go here. That's your SMART goal. And now the point of the action plan is all the stuff at the bottom. That's where we want to make sure we're focusing on is these steps right here. So what's going to be done with specifics? So are we first going to have that meeting with staff? How are we going to get this ball rolling? Because it's not just going to be like, okay, here's our goal. Now what? We have to plan it out in depth. And that's what we need. So we have that process, So say, for example, if we're doing this goal, what's the first thing we're going to do to make sure that we can get them to feel comfortable in expressing themselves? Do you guys have like an idea? What do you guys think would be a good thing to start with to achieve 75% of students? So say we're starting out and we surveyed them and we have only 25% of our students survey saying they feel comfortable in expressing themselves. And we're going to try to raise it to 75 by April. What's the first step you're going to do to like get this done? Feel free to like throw out an idea. We're here to learn, so just feel free. Feel free to unmute and just share your idea on like what you think you would need to start. Whether it's like maybe first we're gonna do a staff meeting, maybe we're gonna do like speak with parents, maybe we're gonna do a workshop. What is your first step? Usually when we do a workshop, you have to do a lot of planning for that. So, but what is that first step you're going to need to take? What is it going to be for you guys to achieve this goal?
Maybe like promoting it or promoting like a workshop or a survey.
Yeah, definitely. So if you want to do like a workshop, you would have to do that promotion. But before that, when you do your action plan, that's a great thing you want to list on your steps. But you also have to keep in mind that when your supervisor gets this, they're going to ask, well, what are you going to do prior to that workshop? What are you going to do in before that? You're going to be like, because these are going to have steps for you, for your staff, like student steps. It's going to have, that's why it says who will do it with names. That's where you're going to put that. So say it's like, oh, I need to turn in a project proposal, or say I need to turn in a thing saying that I'm going to have a meeting on this date. Who's going to send a message to or let staff know that there's a meeting? That's going to be you, to let them know we're doing this workshop. Who's going to turn in the project proposal for the workshop? That would be you. Or is it going to be the students creating the project proposal, like you're having them try it out, or like a youth leader? You're going to put all that information. So when you're doing an action plan, you want to think starting from literally the ground up. You're working it and you're like making this so it's clearly thought out. This is your chance to really think about it and put all that detail into it of like, I need to do this before this. And then always think of that. So whenever you think like, okay, we're going to do this, always think, what do I have to do before that to even have that happen? And if you come to the point of where you keep doing that and then you find I don't think there's anything else I need to do before that. This is the first step, and that's your first step. And that's how you want to go about this. So that's the point of service. So same thing for programmatic. It's going to have the same thing, except it's going to be programmatic. And then the goal is going to be obviously the one that we listed. So by April 2021, 75% of youth leaders will be able to implement capturing kids' heart strategies that build social, emotional development and academic success. So what do you guys think will be the first step in this one for youth leaders? If we want to make sure, say they're starting and only half of our staff are implementing capturing kids' heart strategies, how are we going to get that to 75? What's that first step we need to do?
If we're focused on safe environment, what I have my staff do is I have them point out students and give me names and 3 things that they know about that student. Because establishing the fact that you actually, from a student's perspective, if a teacher or a staff member knows my name, I automatically feel like I'm seen and I'm being looked after. So kind of making sure that we start from the ground up. What's their name? What are 3 things that you know about this person? And, that grows into a safer relationship.
Yeah, perfect. So that can be like one of your first steps that you're going to do is see where they're at. See like what they're doing. Are they doing this? And if they're not, then okay, what's that next step that you're going to have to add into this? The point of doing an action plan is to always make sure you're doing that reassessment when needed. Like, okay, maybe this didn't work. Let's try this again. And that's a perfect way to start is see like, are they doing this? Have that first meeting. Like, hey, so tell me 3 things like how Jessica does with her site. That's a great way to see if they're achieving that goal, as well as like, okay, now you know what's going on. Let's see what else we can do in our next steps. Does anyone have any question on action plans? No? All right. All right. So the last couple things we're going to go over is improve. With improve, this is basically that you did the planning already. You did the whole, the standards, you know what you're going to work on. Now you already planned it. So now that you've assessed and planned, it's now time to implement your action plan in order to view improvements and reassess. So what this means is that say you already did that action plan, say something's not working out, like, oh, this didn't come out the way I wanted to, I didn't get the goal I was trying to get. Go back and reassess. That's the reason why it's a cycle. And it goes back to that assess phase because maybe you need to figure out a different way to do it. Maybe there was a rainy day and it stopped you from doing that. Let's reassess. Maybe we need to figure out a different day to do it. Something small, like it could be something small like that, or it could be something like, this one really, really like not the best. Let's try it again. Let's do something different. So you want to make sure you're always looking and seeing if you're hitting those goals. And if you're not, that's fine. That's the purpose of reassessing and going back and redoing your action plan and editing it and, just doing what you need to do to make sure you do achieve those goals. Because all of those standards are attainable. It's just making sure it works for your program, as every program is going to be very different. One site may look different, like Sal's site may look different than Cassandra's site. And, so that's why you're going to be working on different standards. So one thing, or say you're working on the same standard and say for one thing works at Cassandra's site, it may not work at Sal's site. And that's okay too, because you know what? You just need to go back and reassess and make it work to your site. So that is why it is the cycle of CQI. It is assess. You want to collect that data. You want to make sure you're getting all that information and getting all the data and you're analyzing it to see which standards you need to work on, which ones you got down, all that stuff. After you get that, you want to go back and plan. You want to make sure you're doing that SMART goal, looking at it, making sure you're refining it to make sure it's fitting and it covers all the things you need to go through. And then go to that action plan and make it well thought out, make it detailed as you need to make it so you know what you have to do and you have those steps and you're like, okay, cool, this is the end. Then after that, improve. That is the implementation of it. We want to make sure we're doing what we need to do and implementing it and following through with the action plan. And you need to go back and assess. That is where you go back and do that assess. And it's a cycle. It's like the circle of life, but a cycle of CQI.